Hi there, friends. I'm so excited to be making it into your last week of December 2025. We made it somehow, y'all. We got here. And whether this year flew by or drug on or was, of course, a combination of both, I'm so grateful you're choosing to make this podcast and this conversation a part of this usually pretty special, kind of interesting and out of the norm routine last week of the year. As I was preparing my thoughts for this episode, I was really excited to try to set all of us up, you and me both, and your friends and anyone listening, set us up for success in the new year as busy moms. So here are some of my thoughts. The first thing that I want you to consider before you go into any 2026 big goals or intentions or anything like that is to think about using the new year, January 1 date as inspiration rather than something that sets you up for unrealistic pressure and expectation. I actually think that January 1st may be one of the worst times for big expectations around major lifestyle shifts for busy moms. So let's just zoom out and look at what the last 2 or 3 weeks have been like in your world. You've been trying to get to year-end deadlines with work. You've been so busy, focused on everything that you've been doing to make this holiday end of year December time special for everyone in your world. You need a minute to let life slow down and have little pockets of time to be able to connect back in with yourself in a meaningful and deep way before you decide kind of the goals or intentions you want to set for yourself in the new year. You're also just trying to survive and also savor being at home with your kids without school or daycare, maybe having some time off of work on your own or with a partner if you have one. So you're just trying to enjoy the togetherness and the mess and the lack of routines and the maybe unexpected windows of time that you get when you're not in your normal work schedule, or maybe just the full onness of having your kids with you full time and really losing that kind of quiet reflecting time that you might be able to sneak in a normal rhythm and routine. So hold your horses. Let's just get everyone back to school, back into a new rhythm. If you're anything like me or my family or my friends' families, it usually takes a minute for everybody to get back into their routine. So even though your kiddo might be going back to school like January 5th or 6th, it might not be until the whole week that they're in school and then into the beginning of their second week of school where it starts to feel like people are sleeping regularly. Hopefully you've recovered from whatever colds you've gotten by going back to school. And then you can start to think about how new rhythms and routines could fit into your day-to-day life. So get everyone back into a semblance of a routine and then start the process of reviewing your priorities. And if you were to do anything to kind of set yourself up well before January 1st, it would be just to find a little bit of quiet time to look at your calendar. So if you were to do anything to say, yes, I set myself up well for 2026, starting January 1, it would be to start to look at your daily schedule, your weekly calendar, and start to forecast and then maybe block out, even if you blow by those blocked out times, even if you end up moving them, just start blocking off either 30, 15, let's say this, block out 30-minute and 15-minute windows in your calendar in the daily, and then maybe hour-long chunks of time every few days where you might be able to see that time as time to invest in yourself. So the 15-minute windows of time are just little break points, transition points in your day where you might start some rituals and practices of checking in with yourself and investing in your emotional well-being. And then find those 30-minute windows of time. Maybe there's one a day, maybe there's one every other day that might be utilized for some more strategic self-care, like maybe some nutrition prep or some movement goals that you have. And then look for those 60-minute windows of time. Maybe you can get those every day, but for most moms that are working or highly structured and busy, maybe that you're going to be thinking about every other day, trying to have an hour of time that you can rely on for yourself. So rather than setting goals for like what you're going to be doing and what you're going to be eating and everything that you're going to achieve this year, instead, by January 1st or within that first week of January, block out some time in your schedule, and then we'll decide what to do with it a little bit later. So I love the idea of using that momentum of the new year for inspiration, but not setting yourself up for kind of unrealistic goals that will be very difficult for you to implement the first few weeks of the year when it's usually topsy-turvy. Usually people are recovering from colds. Usually there's a lot going on, and it can be really unfulfilling to not see yourself being able to achieve or follow through with the things that you've set up for yourself. Let's let February 1 for busy moms be the new January 1. The second principle for success as you're forecasting and looking into the new year is to delay setting those really specific intentions and give yourself a window of time for two things: for deep listening and curious observation. So this principle goes so well with the first one because you're going to not set yourself up for unrealistic expectations January 1. You're going to let everybody in your family get used to the new schedule, kind of settle into a new routine, a new normal. And then you're going to do, in this window of time, a little bit of deep listening. So you want to listen to your heart's deeper desires for a couple of weeks. You want to notice your own pain points. You want to notice what hasn't been as fulfilling or what's you've been really struggling to get off the ground in terms of your own well-being and care. You also want to listen to what's feeling really good. You want to listen to what feels easy to do, what feels enjoyable to do. You want to listen to what you're newly inspired or motivated to focus on when maybe in the past you've known it's been important, but it hasn't been a priority to you. You want to listen first without setting goals, without implementing. Let there be a rich period of listening to your deeper desires, your life's limitations, your body's needs, your shifting and evolving kind of sense of self. Like you're going to be changing this year, and what you thought you might have wanted last quarter might be a little bit different than what's actually coming into view for you in this first few months of the year. So I give myself the entire month of January to get back on track. I just try to get back into some of the rhythms and routines that were maybe partially working before the December holidays, or really it's like before Thanksgiving hit, then everything kind of changes and goes out the window for 6 weeks. So I give myself the whole month of January to kind of get back to myself, back to simplicity, back to things that are working. And then I do a period of deep listening. What am I really wanting right now? What is my life, my body, my mood, my emotions, my deeper desires for myself? What is that really looking like? What am I really wanting to go for right now? I listen, and then I do another at least a week or so of curious observation. So we often just jump into action at the new year, even if it's not the best action and even if it's unsustainable, just because it feels good to take any action on our own behalf. But I would encourage you to actually resist this impulse. Take action by blocking out some time in your schedule for future you to get a head start on these things that are going to matter to you in 2026. So take action by blocking out some time for yourself. Take action by reclaiming and reinvesting in things that you already know have worked for you and that feel like a win, feel like just like an easiest thing ever, feel like a gimme to you. Like before you make big life investment changes, do things that are simple and easy. And give yourself the month of January to listen deeply and closer to the new you that might want some new things. And then have some curious observation about what's possible for you in this first part of the year. I'm thinking between February and May. So just 3 months, I want you to observe and get curious. What might be possible now that wasn't possible even a month or two ago? What might be possible now when you get everybody back into the routines and you're finally able to take a breath for yourself? We want to think about observing what's working and what's not working in ourselves and matching those observations with our deep desires. So we observe, we take some notes on ourselves, and then we observe a little bit more. We take some notes on what gets in the way, what, despite our best intentions, tends to steer us off track. We take notes, we observe. We take notes, we observe, and we stay in this curious, non-judgmental place in January so that we can really make sense of what is possible in this upcoming and kind of present season of our lives. We notice any new possibilities in time, interest, motivation, and maybe new supports that could come into play. We notice what's still limited in terms of time, energy, resources. Even if we wish it were different, we just notice and respect those limitations. And in this deep desire listening and curious observation space, we start planning gently for the things that we want to invest in. And we give ourselves a long runway, that whole month of January, to take flight. And as you're planning and you're getting observational and curious, you're thinking about small, simple investments in your well-being that you think you might be able to sustain for the long run. I find that doing this kind of big picture listening and observation, and then creating some really kind of dialed in simple strategies and things to focus on, rhythms and routines to sustain us, doing that expanding big look and then that contracting really focused effort works really well 3 to 4 months at a time for busy moms, because it gives us an opportunity to like start fresh and kind of change things up. But then it also gives us a short period of time to do a few small, meaningful things. I find that motherhood and caregiving in motherhood is so not stagnant. Every couple of months, it feels like it might change, and things that were possible before no longer are. Things that weren't possible before now start to reveal themselves as possibilities. So it works really well to be really dynamic and flexible in our planning for investing in our own well-being. We want to be able to pivot, restart, find creativity in how needs can get met over time, being flexible, but with a steady commitment to returning to yourself, renewing your investment in your well-being over and over again. So rather than having this big thing that's supposed to start January 1 and go all the way to 2026, December 31st, the whole year, you want to think about smaller chunks of time and smaller but consistent ways to really replenish and nourish and revitalize yourself each season of 2026. Okay, so you're using the new year as momentum and inspiration, but not creating unrealistic pressure for yourself. Before you set your intentions for some of the changes you want to make, you're going to give yourself a window of time. I'm suggesting the whole month of January for deep listening, curious observation, and just starting to time block your schedule a little bit for some regular time to invest in yourself. And then the third principle I'd recommend is getting realistic about your personal resource budget for well-being. Because the intentions you set for yourself and what you're going to be doing in those little windows of time you're blocking out for yourself has to align with the resources available in your personal well-being budget. This is what I mean by that personal resource well-being budget. So just like every family has a different financial picture with a different budget that they can allocate their money resources to, and every family has differing amounts of discretionary income to utilize for extra things. So just like every family has a different financial budget, every woman has a different resource well-being budget, meaning a different amount of maybe actual literal money to spend on things that contribute to well-being. But I actually mean more than money, a different amount of energy to invest in personal well-being and different amount of time to be able to invest strategically and different levels of support, like other people coming in to provide childcare, to provide guidance, to provide high-level support so that we are successful in being able to move toward our well-being goals. Every woman has a different level of resource in that well-being budget. And I think that's where moms tend to get neglected and underserved, is that if you just listen to what social media or popular culture is giving you, you feel like you should be really nailing your exercise goals, your nutrition goals, your mental health goals, your relationship goals, that as long as you just like do the right things, that you should be really thriving and nailing it. And I think that is actually really harmful to busy moms. Usually the advice we get in those not mom oriented, but maybe well-meaning spaces assume that you have the same personal resource well-being budget as that influencer has. And that might not be true. And it's likely quite untrue. Things that contribute to your personal resource well-being budget have to do with the age of your kiddos. And one age is not necessarily easier than the other. It just depends on how you're experiencing that age of your kiddo. You may find that early elementary school is so much easier than toddlerhood and preschool, or you might not. You might find that having older kind of tween, young teen kids is actually much more challenging than when they were grade school, or you might not. I want you to see that personal budget as like a moving, kind of maybe just like a bank account where sometimes the balance is high and sometimes that balance gets a little bit depleted. So I want you to notice as I'm talking and reflect on your own well-being budget. Think about the age of your kiddo. Is that contributing to a little bit more dollars in your bank, or is that contributing to a little bit less resource or dollars in that well-being budget? The other thing to consider, not just the age of your kiddo or kids, is the season or stage of life that they're in. Usually our kids go through periods of time where they need more from us. They're struggling, or they're gaining some new skills, or we're needing to get our feet underneath us as parents, trying to figure out how to help them or guide them or support them with whatever they're going through. So when they're going through seasons of high input needs, then our personal resource well-being budget goes down because a lot of energy is pouring out into our kiddos. But if they're in a relatively, like, they've gotten their feet underneath them, they're in a little bit more of a spacious place, then our budget for personal well-being goes up. We're able to give a little bit of more of our energy and our attention back toward ourselves. Other things that influence that well-being budget that's so individual is how much reliable and predictable support you have as a caregiver to take over some of your caregiving duties. So that looks like, is there family resources available? Is there daycare available? Is there money available to spend on babysitters or daycare or caregiving alternatives? Are there resources available to pay for food prep or for house cleaning? Like, everyone has different amount of resource, and usually that's directed to family support and financial support. But depending on how much family and financial support you have, that really either expands your resource well-being budget in terms of you have more time to give toward yourself, or you have less time to give to yourself. And guess what? None of it is right or wrong. It's not better or worse to have more money or less money, or more family support or less family support, or daycare or not daycare. It doesn't matter, actually. What matters is that you are aware of what your current resource is, and that you're realistic with the intentions you're setting for yourself based on what some of those constraints or possibilities are. The problem is trying to match your life to somebody else's advice or expectations without translating whatever that good advice might be into the context of your real life. I'm so passionate about this because I want every woman's inner expectations for themselves to actually reflect their resource budget. Most moms and busy moms I know have pretty high expectations for themselves, and maybe it's a little unrealistic or out of sync with what's actually happening in the other parts of our lives. So we keep kind of churning our wheels and keep trying harder to make things happen, when it might be better to take a second and take a step back and not keep pushing for things to happen, but instead take a look at what's possible in this season of life, look at where our resources are, and try to match our intentions for ourselves within that personal resource budget. And again, that resource budget has to do with kind of time and energy and support. If you're going through something that's really intense right now, it would be okay to let your expectations for taking on new things soften. If you're going through something that feels like more exciting and invigorating and spacious, it would make sense to let yourself step into new things and enjoy that spaciousness. So this is kind of about trying to move the needle in important parts of our lives with a deep connection to what's going on within, a deep respect for the possibilities and the limitations of this season of life that you're in. I want you to remember that your resource budget is dynamic, so it's not fixed. It may stay in a certain place longer than we would like, but it will evolve eventually. We can always work on prioritizing ourselves within any budget, no matter how limited. And sometimes we have to wait a few months for the next season of life to kick in before we have a little bit wider budget to invest in new parts of our lives. So your goal is to get real about your personal resource budget, really understand what kind of budget you're working with in terms of certainly finances, but also just energy and time and motivation. Respect all of those things. Figure out what that budget is, And then the goal is to prioritize yourself within that budget. And a little clue I have for you on how to be super successful in prioritizing yourself is to focus on cultivating fulfillment each day and week and slowly accumulating a rich wealth of inner fulfillment. Kind of like saying, okay, I'm going to put $5 every week into my bank account and just let that wealth gently accumulate, or if you had more to give, you could give $50 every week. It just depends on your personal budget, right? So same thing, you might have just a little or you might have a little bit more to invest. But what matters more than how much you're investing every week is how you let that investment be steady and consistent and capitalizing on how fulfilling that amount of investment is and keeping that going week in and week out and letting that investment start to accumulate. So rather than setting a huge exercise goal for 2026, what if you focused instead on letting moving and connecting with your body in a fulfilling way be a priority of yours, and look for the small little ways you can put that in to your schedule and really focus on rewarding yourself richly and internally for any amount that you're able to put in that week, and seeing that as a slow but accumulating investment that is contributing to your fulfillment over time as a woman. So I think the art to this is having intentions, holding them loosely with an open palm. So we're not letting them go, but we're holding them loose enough that we can hold on to them, but let them kind of morph and shift as life is morphing and shifting, and just holding those intentions with that priority to deep and lasting fulfillment and connection with yourself as you're trying to do all the things, right? As you're trying to do the things that really matter to you, like investing in yourself and in your relationships and in your body and in your well-being in 2026. So my invitation to you as we end 2025 is to draw closer to yourself, allow family and friends and rhythms and routines to be a little special and off balance this last week of the year, and then allow that first week of January to unfold however it's going to unfold. Get everybody, including yourself, back into a semblance of a routine that you recognize. And then give yourself the entire month to just observe and get curious, and then listen and respect your deeper desires. And then as you're thinking about how you want to fill your pockets of time in the first few months of the year, really think about the space and the limits of your personal well-being budget. How full is that account going into the new year? How low is that account going in the new year? And let your intentions and mini goals you set for yourself really align with that budget, so that you're not overextending yourself and you're not setting yourself up for frustration or a feeling of failure. Instead, let's set small, meaningful, and repeatable little fulfillment intentions and see if you can build up your account and get even more connected and resourced in the new year. I can't wait to be a part of mentoring and guiding your well-being in the new year. I cannot wait to hear and see how you learn, how you grow, and how you evolve. Wishing you and yours a beautiful end to 2025.